to do it before, right before the consent calendar in case there are issues that are brought up during public forum where additional items might be pulled. However, if you want to go ahead and let folks know if there is an item that a councilor knows that they would want to pull even before public forum, that would also be fine to pull that now and make a motion to approve the agenda as we ordered. One thing about pulling the agenda items, I think past practice has been to have them go right after the consent calendar. I actually double checked the council rules recently and realized that actually the default is that it actually goes at the very end of the business. But that would be a council's choice if you want to take up any pulled items right after the consent calendar, or go with the default of having it be at the end of the business item this evening.
Well, why don't we just proceed to approve the agenda as is, and then we can, anybody can pull items once we get to the consent calendar.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Yes, Commissioner Rohrbach. Commissioner Rohrbach. Councilmember Rohrbach, sorry.
Yes.
Councilmember Jimenez.
Yes.
Councilmember Brownstone.
Yes.
Councilmember Vice Mayor Penrose.
Yes.
And Mayor Reddick.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you. Okay, so we're moving on to public forum. This is the opportunity for the public to address items that are not on the posted agenda, the regular agenda. So if you would like to comment at this point, you can use the raise your hand feature at the bottom of your screen. Or if you're calling in, you want to raise your hand by clicking *9. Do we have any speakers, Bridget?
I see none. Nope, I see one.
Okay.
Okay, Rico Avila. Can I go ahead and bring them over?
Perdón, ¿se escucha?
Yes, go ahead.
Yo quiero hablar y pedir. ¿Se escucha? No sé si me va a interpretar la persona.
Hold on.
Sí, Rocío, ahorita le van a ayudar.
Sí.
Does she want us? Oh, yes.
Está bien. Ok. Ok. Yo quiero pedir viviendas. Oh, perdón.
Victor, you're muted for us.
Yeah, he's talking with them. Hold on. No.
Así que si el concejal Jiménez se puede meter al canal de español, por favor.
Claro que sí, voy a entrar al canal de español.
Nicholas, are you there? We're not sure if Victor's muted or what's going on.
Hold on, I'm going to end it really quick. Let me see if I can.
Okay, yes.
Talk now. There you go. Go ahead.
Dile a la señora Rocío que después regresamos a su pregunta porque me tengo que meter a otra computadora.
Muy bien, yo le dejo saber.
Okay.
Gracias.
Okay, I'll put you back over on interpretation. Sorry. I just wanted to make sure we're all good.
Rocío, ¿me escucha?
Sí, está bien.
Sí, Víctor dice que ahorita regresa con usted, va a usar otra diferente computadora.
Sí, está bien.
Muy bien, gracias.
Okay. She's done. All right. The next person I have is Ileana Betancourt. Oops.
We were not, it was not, what she said was not interpreted into into English.
Sorry.
Yeah, he's
Let me interpret that for you. Victor is gonna be connecting to a different computer.
device.
And he's gonna get back to Rocio.
We'll come back to Rocio.
Yeah, we're gonna.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
Awesome.
so
We have
next,
2 other speakers.
yes, and it jumped. So I'm gonna let Ileana Betancourt. She was waiting first, and then I'll let Kimberly Williams follow. So 1 moment. Okay, Ileana, you can unmute. There you are. Go ahead.
Hi, good evening. This is Liliana. Yes, I'm the same as Rocio. I'm asking for affordable housing for low-income families. Hello.
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead and speak on your topic, and then.
Yes. Well, I have kids that are growing up, and one of them moved to college in to Oregon, and he's planning to stay there and look for rent there because the rent here is really expensive, and I would love my family to stay here in Half Moon Bay where they grew up, and my daughter, one of my daughters, she has a baby, and she's living with me in the same apartment because of the same thing. I noticed I talked to different people here in Half Moon Bay, and we all, most of us are struggling with the same thing. There's a lot of people living in one apartment, and I don't think it's good for our kids. I mean, we need bigger places in our own spaces. And I see my daughter growing up here in the same house as me and having a baby, and her struggling to look for an apartment because of the rent. I just want you guys to know that yeah, we need bigger. We need a more affordable houses here in Half Moon Bay.
Thank you, Ileana.
Thank you.
Leslie.
Okay, we're gonna go back to we're gonna take Kimberly Williams as next.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
I'll start with a question, and that is, my comment is on item 1F on the consent calendar. I'm not asking for it to be pulled, but I just wanted to make a comment on it. Is that allowed?
Yes.
Okay. So in regard to item 1F, and I'm Kimberly Williams, I'm representing Surfrider, San Mateo County chapter of Surfrider Foundation. And I want to commend the City Council for being forward thinking and preparing and managing for landward migration for the parcel west of the railroad area in this case. If I understand it correctly, I think that's an excellent decision. And I Surfrider heartily supports it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kimberly.
Okay, next we have Victor Hernandez, and then we'll go back to, no, is that you? Sorry, I didn't know how you were doing that. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and open it up here for you. And then go, and then yeah, I'll let you both to speak. Go ahead when you're ready.
Bueno.
I think Victor is working on something and she'll help you.
Okay.
Rocío, ¿sí escuchas a Víctor?
Sí.
Okay.
I can make you, do you want to speak? I can turn it back to live or. Hang on. Victor, you can speak right now in English.
Okay. Great. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
I really apologize for this. I think what will happen is we'll do it this way right now, and then we'll go back to into the interpreter booth. Apologies for all of this. It's just one of those technical glitches that occur during these types of meetings. So I'm really sorry for all of this. Okay. But I think we've got it. Señora Rocio.
There she goes. Whoops. Go ahead. She can unmute. There you go. There you are.
Okay.
Señora Rocio.
Sí, buenas tardes.
Muchísimas gracias por su paciencia y discúlpeme, a veces hay ciertos problemas técnicos que ocurren en este tipo de reuniones, así es que por favor dispénseme. Si gusta dar su comentario, ahorita sería bueno. Muchas gracias.
Okay. Yo lo único que quiero y voy a pedir siempre que nos escuchen, que necesitamos más viviendas en Half Moon Bay.
So the only thing that I'm going to ask, and I want you to please listen, is that we need more housing in Half Moon Bay.
Lo necesitamos porque nuestros hijos están sufriendo y mucha gente lo está necesitando.
You know, we're asking this because we all need it and our kids are suffering, and not just we, but a lot of people need it.
También quiero compartir que el día que hicimos una vigilia, porque estamos luchando para que nos escuchen por las viviendas que tanto necesitamos. Mi hija tomó el micrófono y ella, cuando estaba hablando, pasó una persona y le paró el dedo y le gritó fuck you, no, pues una mala palabra, ¿verdad? No sé si quieren interpretar eso.
I also want to share, you know, we held a vigil one night because we're all fighting for this housing thing. And during that time, my daughter grabbed the mic that night and was speaking. And at that time, there was a person that was walking by and actually like gave her the finger and said, fuck you, and that kind of thing.
Mi hija en ese momento se quedó así como plasmada, pero cuando ella bajó y me dijo, mami, aunque una señora o muchas personas se opongan, yo voy a luchar porque queremos casas. Aunque me sentí mal en ese momento, pero me quedé a la vez espantada y como pensando, pero no me importa, yo quiero y voy a luchar porque nos escuchen, porque necesitamos viviendas.
So, you know, my daughter, you know, was kind of like astounded, surprised by the whole thing. And she came down after that and said, Mom, even though people, you know, might oppose us or do these types of things, you know, we're going to still continue to fight for housing. And even though this was a bad situation, and in that moment, I felt, you know, scared and kind of surprised. This isn't going to stop us from fighting for that.
Entonces, pedimos que nos escuchen, que busquen personas que puedan ayudarnos, que puedan invertir, que hagan lo posible. Yo sé que es difícil, personas que quieran invertir en casas de bajos ingresos, pero yo pienso que la ciudad puede hacer mucho más y puede ayudarnos. Es todo mi comentario y muchas gracias.
Gracias, señora. Un momento. So, I ask, you know, for all of you to listen and to really kind of help us. Maybe you can find some people that may want to invest. You know, I know that it's hard for investors to really want to invest in low-income housing, but I know that the city can do more in that regard. And that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Looks like all of the hands, there's no more hands, no more public comment in line.
Okay, thank you, Bridget.
Mm-hmm.
The next item is proclamations and presentations, and we have none this evening. The next item is mayor's announcements of community activities and community service. And I just have a couple of announcements about activities. Coastal Wildflower Day starts at 10 o'clock. On April 24th at Francis State Beach. There will be lots of booths with people handing out seeds. You can learn about Half Moon Bay sustainability. All kinds of things will be going on. I usually go every year. It's a wonderful event. So that's 10 to 2 at Francis State Beach on April 24th. And then the Friends of the Library will host a sidewalk book sale from 10 to 3 on Saturday, April 16th. The event, along with Coastside Gives, will raise money for the children's garden at the library. And then this Thursday, April 7th, is the first Make It Main Street event of the year. These are held the first Thursdays of the month from 3 p.m. till 7 p.m. So come on down. And that's all I have this evening. Next is City Manager updates to City Council.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. We have a few updates from our sustainability department. I'll give them a moment to queue up their presentation.
Great. Thanks, Bob.
And guess who's back?
Yeah. Hello. It's been a couple months.
Welcome, Veronica.
Welcome back, Veronica.
Thank you so much.
Nice to see you, Veronica.
Nice to be here. So yeah, I'm Veronica Bostonak. I'm the sustainability analyst, and I am here tonight with Jennifer Chong, our Public Works Program Manager, and we're here to give you some updates on our sustainability programs. Already back at it. So first, I want to remind you all that our building electrification ordinance became effective as of March 17th. This ordinance requires all electric new construction for buildings receiving their permits in 2023 and beyond. And any buildings receiving their permits in 2022 must pre-wire for electric anywhere where they install gas appliances. It also calls for fuel gas lines to be capped or decommissioned by January 1st, 2045. So any other questions can be directed to me. My email is on the website along with some the ordinance text itself and some FAQs and some other links that might be helpful. The link is on the screen here, hmbcity.com/electrification. Next, I wanted to give a quick update on our Climate Action Loteria game. You may recall that we've been developing this game with MIG, a consultant team. We have the game completed. The game pieces are completed. I have a little sample of what that looks like here on the screen. On the left, we have the game board, and on the right, I have some samples of what some of the cards look like. It's in both English and Spanish so that we can do bilingual outreach when the CAP draft becomes available for the public. And you can see that we tried to keep the look and feel of the original Loteria game, but added some Half Moon Bay Easter eggs here and there. So we have our adaptive building design, looks like our library. And we have the coastal erosion, looks like the coastal bluffs that you may see here in Half Moon Bay. So we wanted to make it fun and interesting and also a little bit nostalgic. So we're really proud of how it came out and excited to bring it out to the community. We did have our very first focus group on March 23rd. We hosted with ALAS at their community center. We had a really great turnout. We were expecting about 12 families to show up, and we had 20 people show up to play the game. So we had 20 Spanish-speaking families. We had moms, dads, kids, a wide range of ages, which made things really interesting and fun. We had provided food and prizes, gift cards for each of the attendees, and also provided copies of the game for each of them, just to say thank you for helping being the first ones to play the game with us and work out a little bit of the kinks. So we really appreciate ALAS and all of the families that came out to help us with that game. We're really excited. We expect a couple more focus groups in the next coming months and to launch the game officially along with our CAP draft expected later this year. So those are my updates. I have, I want to pause a little bit quickly to see if there's any questions or comments about either of those before I pass off to Jennifer.
Super fun.
Yeah, really excited. Yeah, and we'll have physical copies at City Hall too, if any of you want to come and take a look. Cool.
Great. So, Councilmember Jimenez, I saw you just come off mute.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, thank you. That I heard from the families, that it was fun, and it's a good way to learn about climate change. So thank you for the Loteria game.
Yeah, we're super excited.
Great. Well, I'll go ahead and just jump into the few updates that I have, which are things that I think most of you have already seen from us before, but we are officially in Earth Day Essay Contest season. Thank you, Mayor Reddick, for agreeing to be on our evaluation panel this year. We're looking forward to hopefully receiving a lot of fantastic essays from our seniors in Half Moon Bay, telling us about, California's efforts to reduce short-lived climate pollutants, really, which talks about greenhouse gas emissions, methane, carbon dioxide, and really speaks to the state's effort to recover food and to recycle organics. So that's tied into SB 1383. I know it seems like a really intimidating topic, but we have a lot of fantastic links on the website that take you to every resource that you need to write a really great essay and be competitive. So if you have a kid that is a senior and lives in Half Moon Bay or goes to one of our high schools, please encourage them to check out our website, halfmoonbaycity.com/Earth Day Scholarship. Our contact information is there, and we're happy to answer any questions and to help our kids do some research on a topic that's really important to California and that's really making huge waves really throughout the nation. So Earth Day essay, that's due Friday, April 22nd at 4 p.m. And we're asking that all applications are submitted electronically because we are trying to go green. Next slide, please. My next update is our Earth Day recycling event is back. So as I believe you all are used to seeing, we have 2 recycling events per year. This is our annual Earth Day recycling event. We'll be having it on Saturday, April 30th at Smith Field from 9 to 12. As always, we'll be having some e-waste recycling, document shredding, and compost giveaway. All 3 services will be available to Half Moon Bay residents. We do ask that you bring your ID so that way we can verify that, the people that are residents are gaining access to those services, and we'll be out there rain or shine. More information on that, or if you have questions or contact information, again, is on the website, hmbcd.com/community recycling day. And I didn't get a chance to put it on this slide, but we are actually very excited that we are partnering with the Chamber on a parallel event that will be happening at Cameron's, at the parking lot in Cameron. So off on the same road as Wave Crest, but closer to Highway 1. So folks can come down to the recycling event down at Smithfield, get their services done, and then pop into Cameron's parking lot where we'll have some vendors, including the Chamber, potentially Surfrider, Sea Huggers, some of our other earth-friendly partners will be out there doing some tabling, some outreach, education. So we're trying to expand the scope of Earth Day just a little bit with the hope of next year's Earth Day, hopefully going back to what we had envisioned for 2020's Earth Day event before that unfortunately got shut down. So ramping back up slowly, but for now we have the 3 services and then a mini vendor event out at Cameron's, at the parking lot in Cameron's. Next slide, please. And my last update is a new one, but we figured this is a really great opportunity to get this in front of the council. It's something we're really excited about, but staff is looking to move forward on the replacement and the rollout of a new solid waste management plan in the downtown area. Those of you that know me know that I'm the trash nerd when it comes to city staff. I am obsessed with all things garbage, and those trash cans that you see on the left side of your screen have been a thorn in my side since I started with the city. They're not very pretty, and if you look around the downtown area, we know, staff, we see them every day. They're not necessarily the most functional, and we know that there's a bunch of different configurations of what trash management looks like in the downtown, which is mostly reflective of the many different pilot projects we have tried over the past many years to try to find a solution that works. I won't get into all the details of why we've run into some obstacles, but we're really excited to be bringing a proposal to council at your next meeting on April 19th to hopefully really remove all of those cans that you currently have and roll something out that makes sense, that will be more functional and hopefully really brighten just the downtown area. And I have a little more information on that on my last slide, which is just a high level overview. Again, you'll be getting a thorough staff report at your next city council meeting, but we wanted to give you a little preview of what we are calling phase 1 of the street can replacement project, which is to purchase a number of big belly street cans. So those are the ones that we piloted out at Poplar Beach. Didn't really work out there, so we moved them to other locations like Stone Pine, Library, Skate Park, and they've been a lot more successful at those locations. And they recently went through a business remodel where they are now allowing customers to purchase containers rather than lease them, which is not something we are interested in continuing to do. And so they're currently selling their units for $2,000 per individual unit, which is about the same price as what you're going to find for any other container, if not cheaper. Most of the containers, like the ones we bought on Main Street, are sometimes running about $4,000 to $5,000 per unit. And so we think it's a good value. We think this is a good opportunity, despite all of the supply chain issues that have been happening. They're still offering these for those price, and they can get them to us relatively quickly. So we are trying to move on this before the summer months hit us. Hopefully have a nice clean downtown that can invite all of our visitors for the hot summer months. But yeah, so this phase 1 would be buying a bunch of big bellies, deploying them at strategic locations. And I say strategic locations because we are looking at removing all of the metal and concrete trash cans, clearing up the sidewalks, which some locations are not right now as accessible as they need to be. And so we're really looking at using this as an opportunity to increase accessibility, increase access, and hopefully just make more sense functionally. So the total project budget, which was requested and approved at mid-year, is 120. So the money's there. We think that we can move on this quickly. We have been able to do some preliminary outreach, both with the chamber, with the Downtown Business Association, and the Architectural Advisory Committee. So we have done a little bit of work on this to make sure that folks know that the change is coming. And yeah, we're just really excited about it, hoping that we can make a positive, quick change, get a quick win in the downtown area, and hopefully make the downtown corridor a lot more inviting for both visitors and locals alike. And that's my last slide. Happy to take questions or feedback on anything.
Thank you, Jennifer. I think it's a great move. Looking forward to seeing the new project. I have actually a question that's on another topic, and that is the pilot recycling center. Is that actually over? Is that going to go away? Will that service no longer be available?
So it's to be determined. So I have a meeting with the state tomorrow. As of today, we have not received any additional funding for that pilot. And so without additional funding, the original pilot project end date is the end of June. So the hope, and we've had conversations, we've told them that we are very interested in continuing to offer that service, that our community needs it. It is the only recycling center on the coast side still to this day. So we've made that clear. And we just don't know if the state's going to be able to give us the support to be able to continue offering that service.
Okay, keeping fingers crossed, but thanks for the update on that. Okay, anybody else? Seeing no other hands raised, I guess we can move on to the next item. Do we have any other?
I just wanted to point out we skipped over report out from recent closed sessions. But we have not had any recent closed sessions, but just for the record, I'll just say there's no report out there.
Okay, thank you for that. And no other updates to council? Okay. All right, so we're moving on to adoption of the consent calendar. Does anyone wish an item to be pulled? Councilmember Jimenez.
Yes, I would like to pull item 1B.
Madam Mayor, you're muted.
Yeah.
Why don't we deal with that right after we adopt the balance of the consent agenda? And so I'll accept a motion in a second to adopt the remaining items minus 1B.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Do we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Councilmember Rohraback,
Yes.
Councilmember Jimenez,
Yes.
Councilmember Brownstone,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Penrose,
Yes.
and Mayor Ruddick.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Okay, moving on to the item pulled, which is 1B, ordinance to amend municipal code chapter 1.24 with respect to electing members of the city council, redrawing boundaries and sequencing of elections within the district. And this is the second reading. Councilmember Jimenez?
Yes, actually, I have a question, maybe two, about the ordinance and a few comments. If somebody can actually repeat what was the criteria that it was given to the committee members when they were chosen to do the redistricting of the maps for the elections of Half Moon Bay.
And I'm going to fill in for Jessica, the city clerk, who of course was sat with the redistricting committee at every meeting. She's not available tonight, but I believe we do have a slide that was presented in prior meetings that goes through the criteria.
I can share my screen if that would.
That would be great.
Sure.
Just remind it. We can take a look at that.
Is it up?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So of course,
And I was just going to say, is this what you're referring to, Councilmember Jimenez? This, as Catherine said, this slide was shared with the committee at multiple of their meetings, and I believe it was also shared with the council at a couple of the council meetings. So it best summarizes, I think, what you're asking, but I'll allow Catherine to go through it, and then if you have follow-ups, shoot away.
Yeah, so these are the criteria. It's state and federal law that the committee was instructed to follow. Voting Rights Act, of course, and the California criteria 1 through 4. That's part of the Fair Maps Act. So these were the main criteria they considered. And the ordinance before you tonight reflects each one of these findings in terms of the Fair Maps Act findings 1 through 4. But I'll stop there and see if that answers your question, or if you had follow-up.
The answer is part of my question. Can you continue, please?
I'm not sure if I have too much more to add in terms of what the committee considered. Of course, they were charged with identifying communities of interest. I think that's probably where they spent most of their time. That's criteria number 2, the undivided neighborhoods and communities of interest, and that was a key basis for the 4 maps that they brought forward for council consideration.
Okay. Follow-up question. In my opinion, I think the committee did a great job, when they made a recommendation, when we took 8 months of their lives, to look into these maps. The criteria that was given to them, being smart people, very smart. I don't think I'm close to what smart they are. They took the time. They worked with Jessica. They also, what I'm trying to get to is, when I remember, if I can remember correctly, when we decided, as a council not to be involved, we talked about our fingerprints off the decision, or the process or the redistricting. And that kind of made me, you know, at the last reading, at the first reading, you know, like we wasted 8 months of the time after the recommendation. So for my part, you know, after having conversations with people, I would like to give an apology, you know, to the committee, you know, after they gave us the recommendation of the map they chose. You know, we came back as a council and chose a different map. So after that, actually, I would like to, if we could do something as a council, if we're gonna ask our community members to be part of a committee like this one, maybe we should be thinking about a stipend. You know, because they volunteered the time. You know, it was an 8-month period, you know, to go through it. And they volunteered the time. So what can we do as a council to actually provide a stipend for the future? Can that be possible? And that's another question. Can we offer a stipend to community members that participate in process like this?
I think that was probably the end of thanks for Bob putting that on the map. I mean, in terms of a stipend, our general policy is that these are volunteer positions. Of course, the council essentially is a volunteer position as well, reimbursed, you know, for expenses and you know, very, you know, minimal pay. So the stipend was not part of the committee bylaws when they were formed. And I didn't work closely with the committee, but my general understanding is they found that it was a rewarding experience throughout their tenure there.
So is there something we can change the policy, or because if we're gonna be asking community members to participate, you know, in a process of an 8-month process, you know, the cost of it was, I mean, it says on the report, $45,000 that we spent to go through this process, right? I mean, what it will be an extra cost, you know, for all the members of this committee on committees like this. Can we do that? Can we change policy to do that?
Madam Mayor and Councilmember Jimenez, it's certainly something we could look into. Off the top of my head, I think the council does have the prerogative to modify any rules we have in place with regard to stipends for commissions. The first two, of course, that come to mind are standing committees, your Planning Commission and your Parks and Rec Commission. I actually, those two commissions do not receive stipends. But I think your question is about an ad hoc committee that would be formed, kind of like the redistricting committee that has a life and could in the future, if we had to call on a committee to do a specific task, some kind of a task force, does the council have the legal prerogative to provide a stipend? I believe they do, and it's something we can look into further. But it would raise questions, I think, about your other standing committees as well, if that's a direction the council wanted to go.
Well, it's a different type of committee. You know, the commission, you know, it's appointed, right? In this case, it was a committee that they came forward to do a service to the city. As a private citizen, you know, it would be good, you know, to offer them something. It's just something I've been thinking about.
Councilmember Rarback.
I want to echo Councilmember Jimenez's apologies to the Redistricting Advisory Committee. They worked very hard. They came up with what I thought was a really innovative map. And initially, we tried to adopt it. It was at the last minute that all of a sudden there were a number of objections that really were not relevant if you look at the list of what the criteria for redistricting is. So I feel bad for them. They worked very hard. They produced a map. They produced a final report. And in the end, we did not accept it. And I think that was wrong. And I agree with Councilmember Jimenez that they're owed an apology. I think I don't think we treated them right. So,
Councilmember Brownstone.
Yeah, I would respectfully disagree with my two fellow council members. I don't think we owe them an apology. We asked them to produce 2 maps. I did watch some of their deliberations, and I thought both maps had merit. There were some differences. As Councilmember Penrose brought up at our last meeting, we wanted to pick a map that did the least amount of harm. We then created extra time to get feedback from the 2 neighborhoods most affected. And I felt the feedback was pretty clear that community of interest wasn't necessarily seen by those affected. So I only saw one person who, of all the 40 or more people, who gave feedback on the maps when we were given the extra month or so to give feedback. There's really just one person that, said there was some shared interest between for seniors. But if that was the community of interest, the community itself affected didn't seem as interested in that in terms of staying connected to the neighborhood that they were already in. So, and I disagree with Councilmember Rarbach's characterization of those objections as not having merit. So we gave people extra time. We had 2 maps that were both approved by the committee. They did find that work rewarding. So I don't feel that thing should be characterized as something that we should apologize for at all. And as for compensation, yeah, most of these committees are voluntary. And so we got a lot of people volunteering, knowing what their, the time commitment was. And then we did make our appointments, even though they were anonymous in terms of what we saw in terms of the applications. So that's my memory of the process. That's my input. Thank you.
Any further comment or a motion on the item?
No further comments.
I move that we accept item 1F.
No, it's item 1B.
1B.
Do we have a second?
Second.
I'll second that. I'll let Councilmember Brownstone second that motion. But can we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Councilmember Rarbach?
No.
Councilmember Jimenez?
No.
Councilmember Brownstone?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Penrose?
Yes.
And Mayor Ruddick?
Yes.
3-0. 3-2. Sorry, 3-2.
Thank you.
So moved.
We have no ordinances and public hearings this evening. And then we're moving on to item 3, resolution and staff reports. We just have one item, item 3A, aerial tram speaker. We're going to get a presentation on a proposed aerial tram from Dr. Peter von Bleicher.
Yes, and I'm bringing him over currently.
I see him. I see
yeah, he's here. He should be able to unmute. There he is.
Hello.
Welcome, Peter von Bleikert.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah.
Bridget, will I be able to share my screen for this?
You should be able to, yes.
Yes, yeah, you should have no problem.
All right, let me give that a go.
I'll give you a minute and make sure it works.
Okay, thank you. Do you see my screen?
Not yet.
One moment, please.
Yeah, you're set up too. All panelists can share. There you go.
I see it. Yeah. And I want to make sure you see the entire slide and not the slides off to the side.
Full screen.
All right, wonderful. All right, well, good evening to you all. Buenas tardes. I want to thank Mayor Ruddock and Vice Mayor Penrose and the distinguished council members for letting me join you this evening. Also, any citizens of Half Moon Bay or San Mateo County. I'm very excited about this idea. Obviously, I'm proposing to you an idea for an aerial tramway at Half Moon Bay. I've been in California since 1995. I currently teach at College of San Mateo, and I've been visiting Half Moon Bay since the day I landed in California. I immediately fell in love with it. Now I have a family. I've got a wife and a daughter, and we've enjoyed over the years many, many visits to your lovely town, to your beaches. But we have noticed that traffic across the coastal range has gotten worse and worse. And we know in the United States, we tend to approach transportation with roads. Everything is roads, cars, right? We're all in our cars. I had the pleasure of living in Europe for a while where I could walk outside my door and catch a bus or a tram or the metro. I do think as we reach saturation of population, our options for transportation will become limited. State Route 92 is a perfect example of that, right? Because we are limited by terrain, topography, etc. Very quickly, the reason I do come to the idea of an aerial tram immediately is because this is what my family did back in the day. Back at the turn of the 20th century, my family business built the world's record-holding aerial wire ropeway systems. And as you can see here, I've written a book on them. They were primarily, mining systems and such, but we also had a thriving passenger division. And that was all brought to an end, unfortunately, by the Great Depression. But the interest in it has lingered in me, and I've spent many years researching different systems. Now, we're all familiar with State Route 92. And it's really, it is a frequented artery, obviously east-west artery, but it really changes its character once you hit that coastal range, as we all know, particularly between the Upper Crystal Springs Reservoir and Half Moon Bay. That road can become narrow, windy, and depending on weather or how many trucks are on the road, I sat there once, I think for 2 hours, 20 minutes, just trying to get to the Pumpkin Festival. Now I do know that Half Moon Bay relies on tourism dollars, et cetera. And, I've looked at your data, I looked at your economic analysis over past years, and obviously with COVID, it's difficult to interpret data, but I imagine there are more people like me that have reduced their visits across the coastal range, really because of traffic. And of course, that probably means we're spending less and such. Can you all hear me okay? Everyone good? Okay. And I will stop for questions later, but do interrupt me if you have anything pressing. So I imagine you're starting to see some type of economic impact from traffic. I also, because I teach at College of San Mateo, we have a lot of folks that come from Half Moon Bay. And I'll tell you, my students are always telling me how difficult it is to get over the hill. And we're actually trying to connect College of San Mateo and Half Moon Bay High School more for dual enrollment. And one of the largest problems is that transportation issue over the hill. The solution, and we're actually seeing a bit of a renaissance in the United States around aerial tramways, and that's really because of what I alluded to earlier. We are simply out of real estate, right? We cannot widen these freeways anymore. Railroads are very expensive, and we're starting to see more and more passenger aerial wire ropeways being installed, both for transportation, but really around tourism. They become points of interest. An example of systems that are coming online soon are Boston South Station Transit to the seaport. Clearwater, Florida, downtown to the beach. And this is one that really caught my interest because you'll see I'm going to propose, there's many places you could put a station in Half Moon Bay, but I'm really going to advocate for connecting the beaches. We see most of these systems terminating in beach areas, including Clearwaters. Los Angeles is looking at one from Griffith Park up to the Hollywood sign, which would be interesting. One from Union Station to Dodger Stadium. Even Oakland is looking from downtown to the new Howard Avenue proposed stadium, right? It's very difficult to traverse east-west in the Oakland area. Flying over that traffic, flying over that dense commercial and residential areas opens up potential. I'm not going to read the slide to you because obviously you can read, but the greatest advantages of these systems are really the fact that they touch down in very small footprints, right? So obviously they are aerial, and really we're just talking about the stations and the towers. And with modern aerial tramway technology, we are seeing greater and greater distances between these towers. Really, though, what I'm interested in is the transportation aspect. Obviously, on weekends, your locals, I imagine, are trapped by traffic. Getting up Route 1 towards Pillar Point or Sam's to those areas, can take hours. I can imagine that's very frustrating for locals. I also think about, when we closed Devil's Slide several years ago, and I think Pacifica and Moss Beach were isolated for up to a year. And in an emergency situation, such a system would offer access to Half Moon Bay, either for personnel or for rescue equipment or such. So beyond the transport aspects and the point of interest aspects, there is an emergency preparedness aspect to this. And besides passenger gondolas, you can have cargo carriers, bringing everything from fuel oil to water to food, etc. But I really think the greatest potential for this system is a point of interest, a tourist system. And I'll go into that more as we go through the presentation. But what I am thinking of are a few stations. You would have terminals in Half Moon Bay and Upper Crystal Springs Reservoir, and I will show you those on a map, so to orientate yourselves. A turn station, which may or may not be needed, and I'll explain that, and then a through station. And this through station at the mountaintop location is where I really see the greatest potential for tourism, point of interest, and revenue generation. A general alignment, and this would depend on the engineers, et cetera, and all sorts of studies. But just to give you an idea of what I am thinking about, it's really this junction of 280 and 92 on the eastern side of Upper Crystal Springs Reservoir. And you almost have a straight shot across the coastal range, pretty much hugging the contours of Route 92, and then flying into Half Moon Bay. And I'll talk more about that. I'm sure you've all been on a cable car at some point in your life. Heavenly, I think they're charging $90, and I still did it. But one of the greatest attractions for these systems is the comfort and speed of the gondolas, of the cabins. And depending on the type of system, depending on wind conditions, again, we'd have to do an analysis of this to determine what type of aerial wire ropeway would be needed. But really, we are talking about high speeds, 10 to 30 people per cabin. up to 6,000 per hour per direction. Of course, I start to geek out a little and I talk about free Wi-Fi, right? This is the Valley. A surfboard carrier for sure, because I know I've got a neighbor who's, driving over the hill every weekend to go surfing. Bicycle carriers, and definitely climate controlled. As we know, the temperature can vary substantially from the eastern side of the range to the western side of the range, including altitudes. This is where we have many, many options. Now you can see that I've kind of landed at Francis Beach. This is a beach that I visit frequently. I love it. Usually we'll hit your main street and then head towards the beach. But in general, I would love to see any station, including a cafe for revenue generation. Obviously parking, because we're trying to get people out of their cars, and that would become, paramount, very important on the Upper Crystal Springs Reservoir side. Connection to bus lines, of course, shuttles to the Pumpkin Festival, Mavericks, the Dream Machine events, because people could fly in by wire ropeway, land in Half Moon Bay, no vehicles, and then be moved about to different locations. And really my pipe dream would be to see light rail up and down Route 1, as far as Pillar Point from Half Moon Bay. But again, pipe dream. Locations, I'll show you a variety of locations, but again, I do love the idea of Francis Beach. Can you see my cursor if I circle? So you know this area, and it could easily fly over Pilarcitos Creek, avoiding all commercial and residential development, and then take off without infringing on any property. As I mentioned, there are so many options for how to fly this system into Half Moon Bay. Here again is that Francis Beach area. I've been there. I know there's agricultural fields, etc. Another area when I was scouting, I thought was of interest and kind of keep it away from other areas would be that road that leads to your sewage plant, where potentially you could land in here, have parking, etc., and then shuttles to different areas. And I know there's land across there that's open. There's commercial real estate here where potentially a station could be included in that little development. Half Moon Bay High School, I know that you've got a field here. There's some city property right here near that junction. And I also saw that potentially you could fly in from the south and again, avoid all, residential areas, commercial areas, private property. Here's that through station, and this really would become optional because it would add to the cost, but at the same time, it would substantially increase revenue generation. And just to orient you, this is right here, Skyline Memorial, and you know this junction of 92 and Skyline Boulevard. There's actually a parking lot there, and I thought this potentially could be a through station. And what we mean by through station is some gondolas stop, some do not. And if this was to be built, the potential for revenue here is exorbitant. Everything from a restaurant, weddings are huge business for these gondola stations. It would give access to hiking and biking. You could potentially have camping or a hotel in the area, etc. And again, really, this probably would be a huge driver of your ridership. I know you've got a lot of commuters. I saw a number, you've got about half of your working residents are commuting 10 to 25 miles. And that under current traffic situations, that must be onerous. And I'll talk about how we would help locals deal with that. But this station, and please keep in mind these alignments and these proposed locations are really just me doing my thing. Obviously, the business model would have to be built and an analysis done. But I just want to give you, something to sink your teeth into and get an idea of the potential of this system. Here's Crystal Springs. So this would be at the other end of it. So obviously the main station would be in Half Moon Bay, and that's really where you would find the main engineering spaces. I don't want to geek out on you too much, but we're talking about the primary drive motors, et cetera, for the system, the tensioning for the system. So really Half Moon Bay would be the center, the focus of the system. And then the terminus would really be this Crystal Springs Upper Reservoir Station. I know it's a little difficult to see from this panorama I give you, but really this is where 280 and 92 come together, and this is Kenyatta Road. And you can see it's closed off because it's a Sunday, right? And on Sundays, all the bicyclists take over the road. And that wouldn't change, obviously, because there's potential land here, there's potential land next to the cloverleaf from the freeways. And really the greatest thing that would be needed at this station is parking, because we're really hoping that people would abandon their cars here, would fly over to Half Moon Bay and spend the day using mass transit, buses, shuttles, etc., and then returning to their vehicles here at Crystal Springs. I try and be, conciliatory to the bikers, a bike store and repair, because I've seen them all hanging out here forever. And the greatest connection to other mass transit in the Bay Area would be that shuttle to Hillsdale Caltrain. Now, this all started, Mayor Ruddock was kind enough to invite me, and thank you very much for that, Mayor. After I'd written an article in Wire Rope News, which is a national engineering magazine, San Mateo Daily Journal picked up on it, and I did an opinion piece, and that's really where Mayor Ruddock had noticed it. Now, in that initial article I had written, and I'm happy to provide that to the council if you'd like, I had actually continued the system, or done a phase 2 of the system where it continues down the hill via College of San Mateo to Caltrain. And there's potential for that in the future, especially if federal or state transportation grants come along that facilitate that. But this would really be a place for scenic views, for a restaurant, etc. Now the important stuff, right? And the stuff that I know you public policy folks want to talk about. I cannot give an accurate estimate because we do not know the nuances of the system. I have spoken to several engineers, and they gave me a ballpark of 70 to 100 million. We're talking about a 6.3 mile track, generally straight. Of course, it's subject to terrain and property nuances. But the potential sources of this funding are vast. I know we've done public-private partnerships before. I know you have the Ritz-Carlton in town, right? I've spoken to Doppelmayr, and this had nothing to do with Half Moon Bay. I was speaking to them about as I researched an article. Doppelmayr is one of the largest manufacturers of wire ropeways in the world. They're a Swiss-Austrian company, and they've created what's called a FUNIS grant, where if they can get the preliminary monies, the funding for the business model and the research side, basically the manufacturer of these systems pay for the system. And that's something we could discuss further if you decide that you're interested and you want more information. I do know that there are vast state and federal grants available specifically for transport. I say vast when I'm talking federal, and many of them specifically highlight aerial wire ropeways. Again, because there is this renaissance around them as we run out of room, this realization that we need to go airborne. And, if we don't want Uber taxis flying overhead, the safety of the wire ropeway is there. It's accepted. People are comfortable using them. I don't know how comfortable I'd be in an unmanned aerial Uber taxi. And of course, as you well know, the potential for bonds or taxes is there. Revenue generation. Of course, if you're going to embark on this project, we have to think about how this is going to make money. Now, the first thing, of course, is tickets. And I just wanted to, spitball some ideas for you. And I thought of tiered pricing, charging non-California residents more, having another tier for California residents, and then a local rate for Half Moon Bay residents. And I view that local rate as heavily subsidized, if not free to locals through subsidies, particularly students or commuters. And then, of course, you have the option of a one-way or a round trip. I do believe, and I was reading what Sunset Magazine had said, that you, and this is again pre-COVID, so I don't know where your numbers are right now, but about 4 million visits per year, usually on the higher end of income, higher end of spending. And Sunset said, if growth can be accommodated in Half Moon Bay, there's a great market potential to grow the tourism economy there. And, you know, although I'm, you know, a public policy guy, I don't have the hard numbers to show the impacts of traffic and of the geographic limitations of the current infrastructure. But I imagine that you're at capacity, and you know, for growth, you're just going to see further traffic, et cetera. So I am hoping that this would bring massive tourism to Half Moon Bay, or increased tourism, I should say. The other potential for revenue generation really is, you know, are the facilities within the stations, everything from cafes to restaurants. But I do view the mountain station as potentially your largest revenue generator. You know, weddings, et cetera, right? You just have to say weddings and we know what we spend on those. And they're frequently at beautiful scenic sites. And then I'm very interested in the Ritz-Carlton. I went to school in London. I lived in London for a couple of years. This system wasn't open when I was there, but this is the Emirates airline crossing the Thames. And the only reason I'm bringing this up is the branding. Emirates has paid, since we're talking London, I'll say a bloody fortune, simply to have their name on this. And they turned down the ability to invest in this system initially. And then when they saw its success, they immediately went for the branding. And I'm only pointing that out because you've got this, you know, this elephant in the room, the Ritz-Carlton, which could mobilize, obviously, potentially monies. We know that, you know, they have a presence in Half Moon Bay. Whether they want to make it more well-known, I'm not sure. It seems to be quite secluded. But the potential is really there. And I realize, you know, I'm coming to you with an expensive proposal, but, you know, it's doable. It's completely doable. Other cities have done it. It is doable. I wanted to talk to you about the next steps because I want to leave you with something to think about, right? Not just propose this to you and then go away. And I came up with this slide by speaking to many engineer friends of mine, and again, Doppelmayr in Switzerland. And this is usually how it goes. You know, what I'm presenting to you is obviously not a comprehensive business case study. That would have to be accomplished. But we would look at alignment alternatives, and that would really depend on station locations, right? Property rights along the way, property ownership along the way. You know, I understand the use of eminent domain is, you know, you do not want to go there. And one of the reasons that really attracted me to this system was I saw a lot of public lands basically between these stations. And I know that doesn't make it any easier potentially, but it makes it easier obviously than private property. You would then need a feasibility assessment, and then the front work starts. And this front work is really, again, what the manufacturers are looking for us to pick up before they kick in those monies for the actual hardware and for the construction. Talking to someone in Los Angeles for that system, that was about $7 million worth of work up front prior to launching the full effort. And that's really what I had for you. I understand I had more time. I tried to keep it trim, but plenty of time for questions if you have any, please. And I'll stop sharing unless you want to see a slide again.
Yeah, I keep it available.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's super interesting. Lots of food for thought.
Yes.
You know, one issue in the coast is always coastal development permitting at the Coastal Commission.
Yes.
You know, with all the Coastal Act considerations, you know, views and environmentally sensitive habitat and stuff like that. But
yes,
you know, we have hit the road block, if you will. You know, all widening roads does is, you know, create more cars.
It does.
More congestion. So, you know, we're open to new ideas, and I was, you know, really happy to, you know, learn about, you know, what you're interested in, and see if there's, you know, synergies, you know. But at the very least, you know, we tried to generate some interest out there in the community so that we could get, you know, some good, you know, questions going following your presentation. So Bridget, I would like it if, you know, if there are people in attendance who would like to ask questions now, to raise your hand, and Peter will field those questions, and then afterwards we can take questions from council members or Half Moon Bay city staff.
Okay. It looks like so far we have one attendee raising hand, Kimberly Williams.
Go for it.
Okay. Go ahead, Kimberly.
Hi. Speaking now as a community member, it's a very interesting presentation. Thank you for having this. It really, it's pretty amazing, and I love it on the face of it. I do have a couple of things that I think, you know, would be good to keep in mind. Just the question of runoff into the water source. The reservoir is a water source, and we want to protect that. And so that should be part of planning if this ever got that far, which would be great if it did. And then could the parking or infrastructure on the 280 side be on the east side of 280, better protecting the reservoir and the open space as opposed to imposing more development on that side? That way you'd be more towards the urban interface as opposed to bringing the urban interface to the open space. And again, our water source. And then I just, you know, in terms of funding, I wonder if there's an opportunity there for philanthropy, especially philanthropy partners who focus on transportation and climate change. As one other possible source, which you've probably thought about. But thank you for sharing this. Really interesting.
Peter, would you like to answer her questions at this time?
Yes, please, Mayor. Thank you very much for your questions. Yes, you know, I hike Crystal Springs Reservoir. I share your concerns about the water quality. The simple answer is yes, potentially the station could go anywhere east of the Cloverleaf. In fact, when I was thinking about parking, I don't want to see the parking garage, right? I don't want to see the parking structure. There's potential for that to be underground as well. But the simple answer is yes, the sky's the limit, essentially. And of course, we would want to protect our natural resources. And I love the idea of philanthropy. The truth is I had not considered that. So I'm going to add that to the slide. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, we have another speaker, Bill Balson.
Hi, thanks very much for the opportunity to comment. What a marvelous out-of-the-box set of thinking here. Most of us have some familiarity going up to skiing, and so gondolas are pretty familiar to most of us. They don't seem that intrusive on the environment. In fact, they seem like they can be designed to minimize effects. But there seems to me to be two different functions here. One function is stimulating tourism, particularly up at the top of the hill, and bringing people over. But the other is a people moving function. And the economics of that seem quite radically different. So, you know, maybe I can justify paying $90 to go to the top of the hill, have a great $100 lunch, and then continue on down to the beach and do something there that's compatible with that $100 lunch, and then I have the round trip that goes back. Yes. But when we look at the traffic along Route 1, that seems to me a problem we've created by commingling tourist traffic with regular local traffic. People want to get to school, they want to work, and then, if it's a Saturday, they also want to get their family to the beach, and then they want to drive to a restaurant and do a few other things before they head back, by happenstance at the same moment in time that 40,000 other people want to head back over the hill. So the raw people moving aspect actually seems like the harder problem to me, and the least likely to generate its own revenues.
Yes. Mayor, would you like me to address that directly?
Yeah, please feel free.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so I agree. We are commingling tourist and local traffic. In a way, this would help untangle them, essentially. Locals, would have the roads, essentially, and a portion of the tourists coming into Half Moon Bay will have left their cars potentially on the other side of the coastal range. When I had originally, I think your name was Bill, when I had originally written the article for the National Engineering magazine, I had actually included a proposal for light rail up and down Route 1. I called it Beach Ease, or it's hard to show without writing it down, but basically a beach line. And there's that same potential for this system with buses and shuttles, right? So if I could fly, let's say I'm not a local, I park my car at Crystal Springs, I fly over to Half Moon Bay, I now get on a shuttle, a beach shuttle, up to Pillar Point. I have my cheaper than $100 lunch, shuttles back, right? So I do believe that this would help pull cars off the road. Now, as far as the commuters, again, that as a people mover, I think that's where the subsidized ticket prices for locals would come in. I mean, I would love to see Half Moon Bay residents get a free ride. So potentially, and especially when you see the capacity potential of these systems, the people moving side of these systems, let's say there was no mountain through station, right? And you could be over the hill in 12 minutes and you could move 6,000 people per hour per direction. That has a potential to really take a bite out of the traffic issue. But again, sir, this would be part of the assessment. The impacts of such a system, the business case model would address traffic both from locals and from outsiders coming in. Did I answer your question? Or try to address it as best I could?
No, he's fine.
Okay. Thank you.
You're muted, Bill, if you want to respond.
It just provokes another, which is, we already have a mass transit system along Route 1 in 92, which is Samtrans.
Yep.
And it's strikingly infrequent. Yeah. And just seems like there's a lot of opportunity sort of start from the ground up and build that to see if we can stimulate more people to actually use the service that we have that's mostly not used, as best I can tell, because it's not convenient. It's not frequent. I mean, who wants to go stand out on Route 1 and wait for 2 hours for a bus?
I don't want to, for sure. And, even if you improve Samtrans, let's say you increase the frequency, you're still putting tires on Route 92, right? You're still adding to the traffic. And, they are inconvenient. They are not point to point. And that's why none of us ride mass transit in the United States, or few of us do. I know I would not leave my car and get on a Samtrans bus to Half Moon Bay for all the reasons you just stated. So I completely agree that we have to look at other forms of transportation, but as part of a cohesive system that is point to point and convenient and affordable, right? Now, basically, if the current routes were adjusted to feed from this station, now you have an incentive basically not only to ride the bus, but to ride the tram.
I have no other speakers or questions.
Anybody else have a question? Anybody from the chamber, Midcoast? I'll give you a minute, see if anybody else has questions.
Oh, Crystalline. Go ahead, Crystalline.
Hi. So very interesting concept. Being from the Chamber of Commerce, there's a couple of things that I do just, food for thought for as you think this through. Bringing tram riders straight to the beaches is not going to be a large enough economic stimulus. We would need to get them into downtown. I don't believe proposing additional infrastructure like cafes and things around a tram stop is going to go over well, in that we have a lot of local businesses that exist. They're just, in downtown or at Pillar Point Harbor and so on. Mm-hmm. So I would say the closer you can get it to downtown, the better. And then, so much of it goes over lands that are very multi-jurisdictional.
Yes.
You'll definitely want to check that out. And you did obviously mention the permit stuff.
Yes.
The last transit study that was quite a while ago, but estimated that we had 80% of locals pre-pandemic working over the hill. So if that might be a good number for you.
Thank you.
And then the other thing is I would really want to get the pulse of our local residents in, we love our visitors and we definitely would love ways for them to get here without cars. Yes. But we also need to be mindful that we are not having an influx of 200,000 visitors a weekend because it's too easy to get over here. We have a big issue with our beaches staying clean and all of this. So there's quite a bit of ripple effects that would need to be considered. So I feel like I'm such a Debbie Downer, but
no, look, I'm a policy person too, so I hear you completely. I love the idea of downtown. And when you were talking about the cafes, there's no reason that if cafes or a restaurant or such was to be deployed in a station, that it couldn't be part of an alliance, a partnership with a local vendor. It could be potentially a satellite of their main cafe or such. So there's so many options for revenue generation within the stations. I just kind of landed on cafes because I know how we love our coffee, right? But I hear you, and I do think that potentially strategic partnerships with local businesses could work. 80% of locals going over the hill, that's incredible to me. And that must be a nightmare on most days, I imagine, or they're adding a lot of time to their commutes. And we know that has an economic impact. We know it has a health impact. And then your concern about the influx. I hate to use Disney as a comparison, but you would control basically the gates. The system can be slowed. The system can be stopped. The system can be, reduced capacity. You have total control over the influx, basically, on the ridership. I think having 200,000 people come over the hill on a weekend, potentially could be a good problem. I do see the downsides to it, but again, the business model should give an idea of what type of ridership we would see, and again, you have the keys. You control the floodgates, so to speak, with this system. And thank you for your comments.
Thank you, Peter and Kristlyn. Anybody else? Okay, I'll bring it back to the council members. Questions? Councilmember Brownstone.
Yeah, Peter, thanks for the presentation. Could you send us this presentation?
Absolutely. I'll send it to Bridget.
Reference it, and I probably would talk to you offline about more, not spend too much time now because I have about a million questions.
Certainly.
And things, having lived on both sides of this hill for a long time. Yes. And, but yeah, rather than get into that depth of detail tonight, yeah, I'd love to have an offline conversation.
If I could add one thing, I understand we don't want Silicon Valley on the slow coast, right? And you put a freeway, a 4-lane freeway between the two, you open that up. But these wire ropeways, they maintain that barrier in a way, that in a way would preserve that culture we love so much. I wanted to add that just because I didn't mention that in the presentation. But yes, Councilmember Brownstone, I would love to talk more about this offline, and I'll gladly get the presentation to the council.
Thanks.
Councilmember Jimenez.
Great presentation, interesting concept. Question.
Thank you.
How long will it take to build something like this?
That's a very good question. You mean once ground is broken and all the permitting and such is done?
No, from the start, before everything. Like, what will be from before the permits and before the ground break? What will be the process, the length of the process?
To be honest, that's a tough question for me to answer, Councilmember Jimenez. I've seen systems, for instance, the Griffith Park in Los Angeles. They're 3 years in now, and they're just about to break ground, mainly because they ran into substantial permitting issues and local opposition. It can go anywhere from 2 years to 6 years. But in general, we're looking about a 1-year process for the front end and then about a year of construction. In an ideal world, we know how that really goes.
So right? It will take about 6 years. So
that's right, yeah.
So let's say if we start 2023, probably by 2030, will be available.
Yes.
And
that's at the extreme, I would say.
Yeah. And you said the cost of per person to use from Crystal Springs into Half Moon Bay, it will be right now about $90. So
did I say that? I don't think I mentioned a ticket price. I mentioned that,
you mentioned that at the one in South Lake Tahoe.
Yeah, the one in South Lake Tahoe. Look, they're gouging people is the short answer, right? It's a tourist system. We pay it for the view, but we're complaining the whole ride up, right? About how our wallet was just emptied. I don't see this system as being a system to gouge even tourists. The average price, I was just in New York City last week. I rode the Roosevelt Island tramway across to Roosevelt Island. I paid $7. And that's a normal commuter ticket price. And this system has been running, profitable since its inception. Again, I would love to see Half Moon Bay residents and potentially even lower income San Mateo County residents having a deeply subsidized ticket price. And if we want to rip someone off, it would be the tourist at that higher tier price. But $90, I don't think I would ever ask anyone to pay $90 to ride a tram. That's just the greed of whomever owns, Heavenly.
So
that's off the record, by the way.
Yeah. So you think it will probably cost about maybe $10 to $15 a ticket?
I think round trip you could look at about $15 to $20. Again, a Half Moon Bay resident, I would love to see them go round trip for $5 to $10. Or free if they're low income, they're a student, or low income San Mateo resident. Really, the ticket tiers would be completely up to you all and the business model, right? Now, if we're sending a wedding party up to the Mountain Through Station for that $100,000 wedding, yeah, then we charge 100, whatever, but.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Councilmember Rohrabaugh.
It's great to think outside the box, and I really appreciate presentation. Just wanted to point out that previously, 8 years ago, a local activist, David Ablovi, had presented almost exactly this idea of a tramway from Half Moon Bay to Cañada Road. So it's
really
not the first time, and I think if we could implement it, it would be wonderful. But I just wanted to point out that there has been a history of this concept that has been presented. So I thank you for your presentation.
Certainly. Could you say the name of that person again, that activist, please, council member?
Yeah. David Ablovi, E-B-L-O-V-I.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
See, there's demand for it.
Yeah, that's right.
I would love to talk to him because perhaps we can bring our ideas closer together.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah.
So our vice mayor had to leave us.
Oh.
She had a fourth booster today, not feeling so good.
Oh, yes.
But I know that she was very interested in the presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I have a lot of different questions as well. And I think what we need is sort of a phase two, digesting some of the information and figuring out, how we proceed. I don't know if our city manager has a suggestion for how we might, have another further conversation about this and how to proceed or not with more exploration. But certainly, we had the discussion last time about our priorities, and we said that the roads are no longer really a viable issue. We have to look at everything outside of roads, outside the box, for creative solutions. So I think it's worth looking at some more.
Great.
Bob, do you have any?
Sure. Since you queued me up, absolutely. I also found it a fascinating presentation. Appreciate you coming and appreciate the mayor for setting this up. I like the out of the box thinking too, and I love gondolas as well. So yeah, really super cool. I always think on the implementation side. So I go right to that part of it and the slide you showed. It seems to me, this is one of those crazy ideas that the hardest part initially is getting people to buy in, right?
Yes.
And so, it's been talked about. Councilmember Rohrabaugh mentioned, David Ablovi, mentioned it 8 years ago. And so it's one of those ideas and people go, wow, that would be super cool, but it'll never happen, right? And so the first thing is, that kind of, convincing people with money and power to actually believe that it's not crazy and that out of the box thinking, you need that sometimes. And, I think that is possible. I think there's certain alignment that's happening for these kind of things coming out of the pandemic. You mentioned there's a renaissance. Obviously, you're following it, you're seeing studies being done and people considering it. I know there's one going in at Palisades in Tahoe. That's in construction right now, or will be at the end of the winter. That's, I think, about 3 miles long, and that'll be open next year. So that's happening. The money that's coming forth from both federal, state, and other sources for transportation is big right now. So if there was a time to convince people that it's not as crazy as it sounds, it probably is in the next year or two. And so on that, it seems like obviously we could not do this alone.
Right.
We would have to convince people and get some other people excited about it. And even though all the bullet points that you put on your slide about possible funding sources, all of them in spades, the starting point for us would be to try to convince a couple of legislators to get excited about it, to convince our own to get excited about it. And then probably the reality is someone would have to convince the governor to get excited about it. And if we got the governor excited about it, you know, the first, say, what, $1 million to do those studies is probably not that crazy. You know, there's that much money out there right now. And you know, those first studies that you mentioned, I'm just guessing off the top of my head, probably $1 million just to get things going. And it's probably not so crazy to get to that point, to convince the right people that, hey, let's earmark $1 million to this thing and see what happens. So that's my positive note of you know, I think it has to be shopped around a little bit, and like you're doing now, and convince the right people that it's not as crazy as it sounds. And even if it is crazy, it's okay to have crazy ideas, because that's how things get done.
That's right.
So there's my agreement with you. And again, appreciate Mayor bringing this forward, and I appreciate the presentation.
You know, I might suggest, you know, some community outreach as well, you know, to gauge excitement and interest, expose people to the concept. You know, maybe in the library lobby, you know, having a little area, you know, some panels with presentation slides or maps, to hand out some information, you know, maybe getting a table at the farmer's market on Saturday morning. Maybe, you know, table up the harbor, but I think make it Main Street, you know, first Thursday of the month. You know, to do a little outreach. And I think, you know, I think we have to not just get legislators jazzed, but legislators count heads. And so they want to know how the community is feeling about it. So I would say, you know, build a little presence out here, you know, with your proposal. We can, you know, maybe help find a way for you to do that if you have the time and inclination.
Yes. Yeah, I would happily volunteer to do that. I don't need a stipend. I will tell City Manager Nisbet, I have reached out to Josh Becker, Senator Josh Becker, only because I hired him as a part-timer at College of San Mateo. So we had been talking. I did.
Did he write a check for $1 million?
No, he did not, you know, unfortunately.
Not yet.
I hired him anyway. So I agree with you. I agree it's going to take, you know, that snowball effect. And, you know, really, it may seem crazy initially, but once you start comparing this to other transportation modes, from rail to the price becomes minor compared to railroad and even expanding highways. The costs are exorbitant. And there's no need for bridges and tunnels and all those other things that add massive, massive costs. So it does seem crazy at first. And then once people start to crunch numbers, it starts to make sense. And I think that's why we're seeing that renaissance, right? Especially because, you know, we are built out. There is nowhere else to build, right? And all we need are these footprints for these towers. It's such a small real estate footprint for these systems. I think people will understand that.
Yeah, I think it's pretty exciting. And so we have an item coming up about future agenda items. We might discuss how we move the conversation forward on that item.
Wonderful.
But yeah, and I think, you know, I think, you know, any council member would be happy to, you know, work with you on setting up some outreach.
Sounds wonderful.
You know, I think we need something positive and constructive and get people excited and,
yeah,
you know, off the gloom and doom. So,
you know, when I proposed this to my students in class, the Half Moon Bay students were so excited about it. One actually leapt on it and did a pitch deck presentation on it for me. So I think it's there. I think once we tap it, it's there, right? Both the frustrations from the current transport, you know, to preserving the natural beauty and resources. I think it can sell itself once the numbers are under control and we understand them.
And I do think there's a nexus with emergency evacuation.
Yes.
You know, because our likely evacuation plan is shelter in place.
Right.
Unless we come up with, you know, something else. So there's
And again, the Devil's Slide closure made me think of that. You know, what would happen if Half Moon Bay was isolated in an earthquake, right? And Route 92 was taken out from a mudslide or a landslide. You know, potentially the system would be the lifeline, the artery to the coast.
Yeah. So thank you for a great presentation. We'll keep you posted, stay in touch, and I think we'd like to keep the conversation moving.
That's wonderful. That's exciting to hear.
Yeah.
Thank you all for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Pleasure to meet you all.
Talk to you soon. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Okay. So do we have any commission and committee updates this evening?
We do, Madam Mayor. We have an update from both Matthew on Park and Rec Commission and Jill on Planning Commission. Matthew, you're up. You can go first.
Sure. Thank you, Bob, and thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. We did have a Recreation Commission meeting on March 23rd. It was a really great meeting. We had a representative from the Johnston House Foundation, the president of their board, present on just some background and history on the Johnston House and some of their vision and goals for the future. We're currently working on creating a MOU or a license agreement to just better manage the relationship. Many people don't realize that the city actually owns that property in the Johnston House, but it is managed and staffed and furnished by a private or a nonprofit foundation. And so we're working on that relationship, and the Recreation Commission will play an important role in working that out. And so we got that great presentation. And then really the big portion of that meeting was having our John Dowdy from Public Works and our consultant that's working on the master plan for Smithfield do a presentation on that work and a workshop, and got a lot of great feedback from the community and from the commission members. And at this point, they've the design team and Public Works have gone back to refine some of the concepts, and I know that they'll be bringing something forward to you all in the near future for your response and more public input. So great meeting. This coming meeting will be April 27th at 6 p.m., still virtually, and we invite the community to participate. The commission itself will have a more in-depth discussion about the Johnston House and the area around it. And we'll also have Public Works come back and present on the upcoming capital improvement plan for the fiscal year 2022-23. So for those that are interested in a preview of that, please attend. Thank you.
Sounds like a lot of juicy stuff. Cool. Jill.
Hi there. I will go next. I didn't realize I was sitting here in the dark. So, good evening. I'm happy to give you an update about both the Planning Commission and just a little quick note about the Architectural Advisory Committee. On March 22nd, the Planning Commission welcomed new Commissioner Margaret Gossett. We are so happy to have her. She's just plunging in and really working hard, reading background documents and getting acquainted with the ins and outs of what being a planning commissioner is. And she's just doing great, and we're really, really pleased to have her with us. Then the very next week, we had a special meeting on March 29th, and your planning commission approved the Corporation Yard project. This is a very detailed technical permitting process that they were involved in that included a California Environmental Quality Act document, that's the environmental review, and a detailed coastal development permit. We are in the appeal period right now, and we're just very, very pleased that that wrapped up. You'll notice that the story poles are still out on the project site. They indicate the primary building, the sprung structure, and some of the accessory buildings, including a solar panel array, which is that little lowest bit of flags right next to Highway 92. So we're just so happy about getting through that. John Dowdy, I know he and his staff are delighted, and they're moving on to the next steps with the Planning Commission. Has a busy April. Their next meeting is on the 12th. They meet twice a month on your off nights. They meet the second and fourth Tuesday. So next week they will be taking on the Measure D ratification. We have finished ranking all of the January applications and prepared them into a ranking format for the Commission's review. On April 26th, we're planning to bring them the Downtown Parklet and Sidewalk Cafe program. And we're really thankful to council. You at your last meeting approved a license agreement, or actually 2 license agreements for Vittoria and Barterra, which served as a pilot essentially for drafting this program. Staff is continuing to conduct some outreach, and your commission will be holding a hearing on the program. They have a few future items coming up in May. One of the things they do every year is review the capital improvement program that will be part of your budget consideration. The CIP needs to be in conformance with the city's general plan and local coastal land use plan. So that is a Planning Commission item. They're also probably going to have a study session pretty soon on your recently adopted sustainability ordinance. It's the PV photovoltaic and the EV electric vehicle charging station ordinance, as well as the electrification ordinance. And finally, I'm really happy that Karen Decker on your staff and Erica Wood has been consulting to the city for the Coastside Recovery Initiative, have agreed to come and meet the Planning Commission and give a presentation on the Coastside Recovery Initiative, its primary findings, and we're looking at specifically those that have strong linkages with land use decision making that would come before the Planning Commission. So that's what we're doing with the Planning Commission, and also, of course, they're going to be seeing the housing element sometime at the late spring, early summer, and then that will be coming up to council. Just a quick note about the Architectural Advisory Committee. They meet once a month. They had a standing meeting time of the 3rd Thursday, and we've needed to shift that. They needed to accommodate a member's schedule. And so Bridget, who's here tonight with you, has done a great job, and we found that we can just move it to the 4th Thursday of the month. They meet in the morning at 8:30 when everybody's fresh. We are, both of these groups, the Commission, Planning Commission, and the AAC are in Zoom format at this point. AAC has met in person for a few months, and then we had to go back to Zoom for a while. I think all of us are looking forward to transitioning at the right time, and we're watching council's preferences and going to follow your lead on that. Thank you.
More meaty stuff, lots of meaty stuff going on at City Hall. Good to hear. City Council reports. Anybody have a report out from any of your boards or committees that you're on? Harvey?
Yeah, I got a couple. I attended the Mid-Coast Community Council meeting, I don't know, a week and a half ago. And they were concerned about wildfires. There's lots of different agencies are now doing different proposals and grants and cutting down eucalyptus trees in the medians in El Granada. So there's a lot of discussion about how to do wildfire protection and how to get grants to do it. The other presentation at MCC was about harm reduction for drug overdoses. There was a really nice presentation about realistic ways that we can reduce overdose deaths, particularly from fentanyl. So I learned a lot, and I thought that was a really good presentation. And they're willing to give a presentation to the city council if we wanted to hear about harm reduction from drug overdose. The other meeting I attended was the Peninsula Clean Energy board meeting. There was lots of stuff going on, but the thing that was really of interest was they presented the initial results of all the requests for buying power, both renewable power and storage. They had over 70 responses to their requests. They kind of sorted them into different categories. But the thing that I really found sort of sad was that storage prices, contrary to what you may have been hearing, are going up something like 30-40% a year. And so it's kind of important that that PCE gets on the bandwagon soon with this storage. It's not just batteries. There are different kinds of batteries. There's water storage. There's lots of ways that we can get power during the times when the sun isn't shining and the wind isn't blowing. So I found that interesting. That's my report.
Thank you for a good report. Yeah, I'd like to hear about the harm reduction. I think that's a worthy presentation, maybe during the month of May.
Councilmember Rarbeck, do you have a contact that you can provide us?
Claire was the one who set it up, so.
Okay.
Anybody else? I'll just give a SAM update. So we had a report back from the consultant on alternatives for relocating SAM's electrical system. And SAM board decided to get the report to the agency staff and agency engineers and possibly convene a group meeting to give direction on going more deeply into one of the two recommended alternatives. Both pretty expensive. We're looking at upwards of, probably $2 million for the preferred, but it has to be done. And the two alternatives basically keep everything out of harm's way. They relocate it so it's more maintainable. So staff and staff's engineers will be looking at that. And then we voted to send the draft budget to the member agency, so it'll be coming to City Council, I guess in May. So that's that. And then as for future agenda items, anybody have something? Joaquin.
Well, I don't know if it's an agenda item, but I would like to see the map that it was proposed for the courtyard, especially the access road. I looked at the map, what is being proposed for the access road, and it doesn't make any sense. First thing, it takes about 1/3 of an acre, of the existing road, and now that the city, we are looking into making potentially building affordable housing on the location. 1/3 of an acre is a lot, when it comes to housing. And I looked at the fence, that is being proposed for the frogs, endangered species frogs, to follow the tunnels, and the fence doesn't make any sense either. So I don't want to say an agenda item because it could be, maybe a couple months before it is brought up to a meeting, but maybe we can review, the map, the access road, and why the access road has changed from the existing access road, and about the fence that is being proposed to be built. That to me, doesn't make any sense. The direction of the frogs is to go east into the tunnels, and the fence is actually building a bucket, away from the tunnels. So that it doesn't make any sense. So we'd like to review that before any further movement on the building on the access road and the fence. So I don't know what item would that. How can we do that?
Well, we just heard that apparently the Planning Commission approved the designs, unless I misheard. So it's probably something that's best worked out talking to Jill and John, our Public Works Director. The City Manager is unmuted. Do you have a recommendation there, Bob?
I was just, I guess, going to clarify the same comment you just made. So at this point, the Planning Commission has approved the project and issued a coastal development permit for the project. So we are planning to proceed on their direction and that permit and the design that they reviewed. And we are under, as we've mentioned to you before, a very tight time schedule here with this project because we borrowed money from the state iBank and we have critical commitments to spend that money and draw down that money for this project. So if we could certainly meet with Councilmember Jimenez and go over the design with him and do that. But at this point, unless the council were to bring the item to themselves, we're going on the Planning Commission's approval at this point. I will give a short answer. I do think it would be very good for Councilmember Jimenez to meet with Jill and John. The short answer is I did watch the meeting. The short answer, very short, don't mean to get into a long discussion. The short answer is the driveway was smoothed out so that it would have better turning radiuses for big trucks and equipment. Right now, it makes two hard right turns, a right turn to the left and then a hard right turn to the right. And those turning radiuses are just not good for big equipment. It was mentioned at the meeting that down the road, that I didn't mean to make a pun there. The road could be reconfigured. If a housing project were to go in, we would be talking about a complete redesign. We'd have public roads potentially come in to serve those housing, and that could all be done at that point. This is just a driveway; it's not a public road, but it was done for a better turning radius. And then, short answer on the fence, that was Planning Commission's direction. It wasn't. Staff was okay either way. There was an original configuration that kept the fence more of a tunnel to the tunnel that goes under the road. And a suggestion was made by one of the commissioners for simplicity to some degree to have that fence just follow the road to make it a more compact area. Now that area is larger. And then when that question came up, is that good or bad from a habitat point of view? The expert, our expert, indicated that more upland habitat is always a good thing. And I think based on that comment, the Planning Commission went ahead with the change to the fence configuration. And from a staff functional standpoint, that change didn't matter to us in terms of the function of the public works yard either way. So that's the short answer to how those two design changes were made. And again, I would encourage Councilmember Jimenez to meet with Jill and John at his earliest convenience, and they can share the plans and go over those details with them. In a situation like this, when it's been approved by a Planning Commission, can a city council member challenge that decision? That is council's prerogative. So I can actually challenge that decision of the plan on the Planning Commission. Well, I believe you would probably need a majority of council to want to do that. I would like to make a motion to challenge the decision of the Planning Commission of the access road for 880 Stone Pine and the building of the fence.
I don't think that motion is in order. I'm checking in with the city attorney.
Yeah, I was just going to chime in to say that this isn't an agendized item for this evening. If I suppose a couple options, and Jill, please feel free to weigh in. If the council wanted to agendize a discussion of this, that could be something, you know, as for the second on this, we could, council could bring it forward. There is, however, an appeal period, and I can't remember, Jill, what you said, when the appeal period runs, but once that's run, it's a, you know, the CBP is final.
So I can confirm all of that. You know, it would be, I think, really helpful if Councilmember Jimenez wanted to stop by my office so I can review these items with you. I think the Planning Commission discussion was really hard to follow at some points because they were flipping from map to map, and we had a number of pieces of input about the location of the fence and a few other items. And I would really like to go over the final version with the conditions. And I think you might be more comfortable, maybe you wouldn't, but I'd really like it if we could have a 30 minutes to do that. I'm happy to do it anytime. We are in an appeal period. It ends, the Planning Commission appeal period will end next week, 5 o'clock Wednesday.
And who do I go to appeal that to the Planning Commission? How do I do that?
You can come and meet with me, and I can show you how to do that.
I'm going to ask you, please consider not, but that's fair enough. And I'd love to talk. I would love to talk a little bit more. Yeah. I'm happy to do that. I'll be around tomorrow and Thursday, and happy to talk about it.
Yeah, and we're starting to get into the dam inundation study.
Yeah.
And looking at the SFPUC capital improvement plan. Nothing will begin construction for another 8 years in any case, right? You're looking at a decade before you could build that.
That's okay. We'll get there.
And I, if I could, I just want to clarify what a third of an acre is. Somewhere around 12 to 13,000 square feet. It does not stop the number of units that you, I think, as the council have wanted there. That is not a significant amount, and the street can be modified. So I'd love to talk about it. I think it's just a misunderstanding more than it is an issue of an appeal. So I beg of you to come visit us.
A quick question: how big is the property on 555 Kelly? The house there on 555.
It's about 6,000 square feet. You know, I sense there is some urgency to this. So, Madam Mayor and Councilmember Jimenez, if we will make time to meet with you tomorrow if you're available. I think we meet as quick as possible to discuss this with you offline, and then you can ask questions and make decisions from there as to the direction you'd like to take. But I'm available tomorrow, and I'm sure Jill and John would also clear their calendar so that we could meet with you and go over some of the details behind the project and the planning, what the decision the Planning Commission made last week.
Okay, Councilmember Brownstone.
You're muted.
Yep. Squares moved around. I was trying to click it. Yeah, thank you. You know, it hadn't come up yet this evening, so just to inform the public, some good news about our Murata Bridge replacement. The Board of Supervisors just voted for more than $4 million to fund that project, and there's just a lot of folks to thank with that. For that, I think goes all the way back to our relationship with the Coastal Commission when we passed our LCP, and the ability of the county planning department to work with the commission, which actually, you know, made some pretty strong, in order to get the permit, the Coastal Commission insisted on a number of design changes that were really quite expensive. Maybe almost doubled the price of the bridge from where it started, but the county didn't flinch and wants to build it, and there'll be some nice improvements, the picnic grounds around it. So anyway, it was great news. It just really reinforces that project is a go. And it's nice to see that it's moving forward because we all would love to have our coastal trail reopened in its entirety at that side. So I just thought that was really good news to hear that they voted unanimously for that. So it was great.
Thank you for sharing that, Robert. That is good news. Thank you. I just have a future item, and that is I'd like to have a discussion with the city manager and the public works director and the vice mayor about how to continue this conversation with the council on the aerial tram. Clearly, it's not an urgent matter, but what might be a good approach? And I know Robert has a lot of questions, and everybody does, but how do we continue the conversation? So I'd like to have a discussion with staff about that and with the council's input. Don't you have anything else? Nobody else has anything? Hopefully Councilmember Jimenez will meet with staff tomorrow. And we can adjourn this meeting. Thanks, everybody. Have a good evening. A good company.
Good night, everybody. Good night.